Alright, in this video we're going to be taking a look at how to essentially make a logo or a graphic into a 3D object that can be 3D printed or maybe even laser cut or used in CAD. And it all starts with our vector file. So the first thing you're going to need to do is convert your photo file, so JPEG or PNG, on over to a vector format. There's another video on the YouTube channel about this. So take a look at that if you don't already have a vector file ready. Now, if you do have a vector file ready, like this one that we see here that we made in the earlier video, then we're going to want to make sure it's in a .svg format. Now, that's a pretty much universal but less complex file type for vector that can be used pretty much across any platforms. So a lot of our files we work in Adobe Illustrator simply because it's a lot more complex and just works better in general for larger designs, more complex designs. So you're going to want to switch from an Adobe Illustrator file or a .ai to .svg if you haven't already done so. If it's already ready to go in a .svg format, you don't have anything in the background, it's a transparent background, it's just the lines that you want to be extruding, then you can go ahead and skip this part and go straight to where we look at Tinkercad. Okay, so I'm going to assume that we have an Adobe Illustrator file that we've removed the background from, we've removed any elements that we don't want to have extruded, and now we're going to go ahead and save this as a .svg. Now that's really easy to do in Illustrator. We literally just go to File, Save As, and then we can change the file type to a .svg. So we can go ahead and change it to a .svg and save. And it's going to ask you, about different subsettings and whatnot. You can go ahead and use whatever the default one is. And then it will have exported to a .svg, which is what we're actually looking at now. It automatically opens it. If everything looks good, nothing's been distorted, then your SVG file is ready to go. So once you have your SVG, you can head on over to tinkercad.com. Now, when we get to Tinkercad, you're going to want to either sign in or join now. If you already have any other Autodesk products, so that includes AutoCAD, Civil, AutoCAD Architecture, Inventor, all sorts of stuff like that, then you're going to actually use the same login as you normally would use. So then the next thing we're going to want to do is press Create New Design. Now I have a bunch of random stuff in here already because I use it all the time, but what you're going to want to do is create a new design once you've pressed that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click this one because I've already created it. Yours is going to look exactly the same because there's nothing in here. And then we'll see that we have a work plane. Now this is way, way, way simpler than SolidWorks, especially if you're on the graphic design or business side of the team. You may not necessarily have the time to learn SolidWorks. If you need to do quick and dirty adjustments and make things really quickly, Tinkercad is perfect for that. However, it is not accurate at all. If you need anything accurately measured, highly, highly recommend you use SolidWorks or something better. But this is really good for basic stuff, including extruding existing SVG files. So we're going to go ahead and press import and choose a file, and I'm going to click the file that I just saved as a .svg. Now you'll notice only SVG files show up, and you're going to want an SVG file. And then you can take a look at the width and the length, and you're going to have to change it down to 1000 at the maximum, so that's either length or width. And that's okay, it's just scaling down the quality a bit, but it should still be more than good enough to give us a good extrusion of this. So I can go ahead and press go, and it'll take a bit depending on the complexity, but look at that. How easy was that? We have a beautifully extruded Ryerson Formula Racing logo here. So some quick controls are you can press these little corners to adjust the size, obviously. Control Z is back. If you want to change this uniformly, you can hold Shift at the same time as you're moving your cursor, and it'll scale uniformly. And if you want to export this, which you're going to want to export it, you can just press export and choose the file type. Now, if you want to 3D print, you should press STL because STL is used across pretty much all slicers, which is the software that basically creates instructions for the 3D printer. So you're going to want an STL file. An OBJ file is a little bit more complex, a little bit more detailed, has more information. However, it's not universally accepted. And honestly, I've never found a need for a .glb file, though you might run into it in the future. And then if you're laser cutting, then you don't need to go through this process in the first place because you already have a .svg file. So you can go ahead and press STL and it'll export it. And now I have a 3D object file of my logo. Now, if you want to have specific heights or specific widths, you can do this as accurately as you want. You can change the scale. You can change the scale of your work plane and whatnot in order to match what you're working in. I like to work in millimeters, and so it's showing 109 millimeters by 98 millimeters. If that's the size you want, then that's good. You can adjust these manually if you have size in mind. You can also adjust the depth, so it just automatically put it to 2.24 millimeters. However, I can make this as tall or as thin as I need. You can also do this in SolidWorks later on if you'd like. However, this is just a really easy way of doing so if you already know what measurements you need. And that's pretty much how you go from a photo on over to an extruded 3D object of a logo.